This is chapter 8, August. It's called Monsters. So if you look, it looks like, there's a bunch of junk down here. It looks like maybe this is Shirley's dad turning on the light, and there's Shirley kind of standing back. Within the week, Senora Rodriguez was happily on her way to Nani. Shirley barely recognized the woman who stepped into the taxi, stuffed with suitcases, stuffed with gifts. She wore a white linen suit and spectator pumps, topped by a straw hat as smart as a lampshade. When she waved goodbye, her smile sparked. A paste of Chinese herbs concocted by Mother had magically coaxed sore gums to adopt the 28 intruders fashioned by the dentist. Once the taxi disappeared from view, Shirley turned to her parents. "Will it be difficult taking care of this house?" Father shrugged. "Probably not so difficult as raising a daughter. I will help, I promise." "In that case," Mother sighed, "kindly refrain from acquiring any more houses for the time being, my little landlord." "Are you angry with me?" "Not at all. So long as we are collecting rents, we will not have to pay any. We're rich! We're rich!" "Not quite," said Father with a smile. "The first month's rent has already been spent. A surprise for you." "A whole month's rent just for me?" "You've earned it." "What is it? Can I have it now?" "Patience. It will arrive soon enough." That night, squeezed into her drawer bed like a stepsister's foot in a Cinderella shoe, Shirley could hardly sleep thinking of what the surprise might be. Not a piano. Please let it not be a piano. The Senora had gone, but Toscanini was left in her care. If it was a piano, she must send a secret letter to China and tattle to the elders about her infamous piano lessons. Surely even a granddaughter who was a sing-song girl would not do. Perhaps it was a lifetime of tickets to Ebbets Field. No, her parents would never take her there. Another engine of some sort? That must be it, she thought. But what kind would be made especially for her? A bicycle? No, not expensive enough. An engine that would match her socks and hang up her clothes? She had never heard of one. A machine that would make strawberry ice cream? Now that would... She was asleep. The surprise was delivered the next afternoon. It looked suspiciously like a sofa. A plain, ordinary sofa to sit upon. Father must have seen the disappointment on her face, because he quickly cautioned her. "It isn't what it seems." "It isn't?" After the old sofa was removed and the new one was in place, he told Shirley to stand back and close her eyes. She did. When she opened them again, there stood a giant bed fit for an emperor. Shirley threw herself on the mattress and lolled about like a fish tossed back to sea. "How do you do it, Father? How?" But before he could say a word, she shouted, "I know! It's just another wonderful engine made in America." The first Saturday after the departure of the Senora, Shirley sat at the breakfast table, hunched over the sports page of the Herald Tribune. Her hero had led the Dodgers to extend their winning streak to 13 games. But what did the writer mean when he warned about the dog days of August? "Shirley, let's go." She looked up to see her father dressed in an old pair of pants and an even older shirt. Since he never went anywhere except in a handsome suit and jaunty bow tie, Shirley was surprised. "Where, Father?" "To work." She was more puzzled than ever. Only other engineers understood what her father drew on blue paper, and he never dressed like this for the office. "Hurry, it's about time we landlords took a good look at the property. We'll start with the furnace room." Standing in the dimly lit basement while her father tried one key after another, Shirley was glad she was not alone. The strangest noises oozed from behind the locked door. Perhaps Nani was not the real reason the Senora had been so anxious to leave. Perhaps there was a monster, one who dined on little girls and had terrible indigestion. The door creaked open. Father disappeared into the darkness. "I wonder where the light switch is." "Please let him find it quickly," she prayed. Shirley had to will herself to stay put. Surely there would be a flash of the monster's claws. Oh, please. There, that's better. The dungeon held no monster, but it was a beastly mess. The walls were stone, dirty, and damp. The ceiling was cluttered with pipes that dripped, and enough spiderwebs to keep Irvy content for a year. Piled high everywhere with junk, metal skeletons of forgotten species. In one corner stood a black iron box the size of several coffins, and another huge rusty canisters. Underfoot, pools of murky water slick with oil. Fearing lizards and rats, cockroaches and snakes, Shirley hastened to her father's side. Yuck, this is horrible. But father did not seem to hear. He grinned as if he had unearthed a store of treasures, banging a pipe here, examining a wire there. This will be a wonderful challenge, just wonderful. Had father gone loco? Throughout the game with the cubs they worked, sorting, cleaning, stacking, drying, saving, discarding, boxing. Throughout, Shirley wished she had never heard of Nani. She longed for her old drawer bed. The Emperor could keep his. The worst part of it was father did not even notice her unhappiness, her goodness. He hummed as he puttered. How could grown-ups be so blind to the pain of those younger and shorter than they? It was not fair. If only she had a fever, then she could rest. Mother would wait on her, making sweet and sour soup and all the things she liked to eat. Father would buy her presents. She could listen to the radio. But she almost never had fevers, so that was that. Shirley, come here and help me with this. Yes, father. It was many evenings and weekends before Shirley realized the treasure her father had mined from the basement. With his alchemy of ingenuity and patience, he transmuted the junk into valued presents for every tenant who lived at number 4 Willow Street. A toaster for Professor Hirschbaum, who knew everything except how to cook. A sewing machine for nearsighted Mrs. O'Reilly, who was forever tailoring old clothes for her triplets, Sean, Seamus, and Stephen. A vacuum cleaner for Mr. Habib, who prized his carpets from Persia almost as much as his poodle, Mademoiselle F.P. At one time the initials had stood for Fifi Pompadour, but of late the pet had been known to all who shared the halls as Mademoiselle Faulty Plumbing. A fan for Widow Garbadilly, who now made father an exception to her rule that men were never, ever to be trusted. An exercise machine for Mr. Lee, the 98-pound weakling. Meanwhile, in her role of unhappy helper but obedient daughter, Shirley had become quite adept with tools and familiar with the inner workings of the old house. What she could possibly do with her knowledge of the intake valve, the Phillips screwdriver, the temperature cutoff, the ground wire, she did not know. But father's pride in having raised a handy girl sometimes seemed worth the trouble. There was one task, however, from which father excluded her. He was much too meticulous an artist to permit so unsteady a hand to apply even a drop of paint to his hallways. And so the goddess Kuan Yi at last showed her mercy. While father painted the halls a lovely pale beige, Shirley was free to add her house to the protest against Enos Slaughter of the Cardinals, who had deliberately gone for Jackie Robinson's leg instead of first base and spiked her hero. It was a heartbreaking game, and the Dodgers lost. But Robinson would not be sidelined, and the Bums took the next 5. The pennant was within sight. One evening while father was out and Shirley was pasting clippings in her Dodgers scrapbook, the lights suddenly went off. Yes, of course, naturally, mother screamed. Every tenant was shouting up the stairwell. Mademoiselle yapped, Toscanini squawked, Sean, Seamus, and Stephen cried. Shirley took charge. Don't worry, Mother, I know just what to do. You do? What is it? Do it quickly. At every turn, Shirley collided with her mother. Sit down, Mother. I will first go into the kitchen to turn on the stove. Then I will light a candle and change the fuses in the fuse box. Fuses? What's fuses? Never mind. Shirley's tone befitted her superior knowledge. You'll see, within minutes the lights will all go back on. Hurry, hurry! With keyring in one hand and candle in the other, Shirley made her way past the frantic tenants to the basement. There she inserted the key into the lock, but as the door swung open, out went the flame. Onto the floor dropped the candle. Vanished her confidence. It was darker than an underground cave on a moonless night. The familiar noises of the boiler and pipes no longer sounded so innocent, and though she knew spiders and vermin no longer lurked within, she pictured them, multiplied and magnified, waiting to take revenge upon the little landlord who had so callously ousted them from their ancestral homes. Her legs felt like spaghetti out of a can. The keys jingled in her hand. When she swallowed, it was her heart. Why had she been so quick to show off again? Next time she would hold her tongue. Next time, if there ever was a next time. But done was done. She had to finish what she had started. She took a few steps to the fuse box. She must, she would, she had to. Pocketing the keys, she felt her way along the walls. Was it her imagination, or did they feel wet and sticky, like blood? Hand over hand, she moved along the wall, stopping at each step to explore the surface, searching for the door to the fuse box. She should have reached it long ago. Who had moved it? If only she had a gourd to ward off the wicked spirits that delight in displacing everyday things. If only she had worn a talisman to ensure a long life. But she was defenseless against all the demons of the dark, defenseless even against her own thoughts, which told her the walls were clammy with goo like the innards of little girls. It seemed like weeks had passed, as if she had inched along the entire length of the Great Wall of China, which the emperor had built to keep out the barbarians, all 1,500 miles of it, when she heard her father's voice. Shirley? Shirley? Like a criminal pardoned at the gallows, she ran from the scene, hand over hand along the walls up the stairwell. Father! Father! Between the second and third floor landing, she fell into his arms. I thought you might need some help, he said, as matter-of-factly as if saying, Good morning. Shirley took a deep breath and waited for her voice to return. I certainly could have done the job alone. Changing fuses is easy, but maybe with the two of us, it will go quicker. Yes, indeed. With the aid of his cigarette lighter, the mission was accomplished without mishap, but when the lights returned, Father screamed. Fearfully, Shirley looked around. Were there monsters after all? But no. To her horror, she saw that the sticky goo had been no figment of her imagination. Unbeknownst to her, Father had painted the furnace room, and the paint had not yet dried. Now everywhere Shirley looked were little red palm prints, like a school of exotic fish swimming down the halls and up the stairwell. Upon further study, she thought her handiwork rather dazzling, most original, a masterpiece even. If only the other tenants of No. 4 Willow Street could be made to think so. But alas, like so many great artists in history, Shirley's genius went unrecognized. Her masterpiece soon lay unseen beneath several new coats of ordinary house paint. So all that goo that she thought was really wet paint, and she was putting her hands in it all the way along the walls. And that is the end of Chapter 8, August.